Welcome everybody back to New Waylie, and today we're going to start detailing something that we saw at the very end of the last video, and that was our power generator thing. I'm just going to be calling it a power core.
Core is mother. Core is father.
Most exciting is that we'll be done with this residential area and we're going to start a whole new area, our first commercial complex. That means we're done playing houses Skylines. Oh well, guess we're back to boring old city skylines. Now, as you can see here from how I'm manipulating the shapes, the basic parts of this core is actually very simple. It's only three shapes. It's this glass square covering, which I believe is a carport. The main center part is a crystal power station, I think. Everything's going to be in the description, of course. And right under it, which you can see is a little bit more not fan, but like heatsink-like and whatever. That's a building. That's some sort of residential building. But I squashed it down there. But that was not going to suffice, and of course just need a lot more details to make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more greebly, you know, adding little details and mechanical kind of things. So we started off with this kind of, I'm not sure if it's scaffold or a ladder or something, but yeah, just kind of trying to add some sort of, like, maybe kind of look like piping, or just like everything else I'm improvising here. Just gonna see what we can make out of it. So I was basically looking for some sort of pipe-like, tube-like kind of assets. So that's why I started with that one. But I was also going to look for actual pipes, which I just placed, and just try to show that we have some sort of interconnected network of conduits or cables or whatever it might be. So just adding little details. Anyway, after that came some lighting, which we're not going to see very much here because, to be honest, it's just a lot of tedious manipulation with Move It to bring it up and down the right way. But the key thing is that the lights do shine through the model inside, so I was just trying to find the perfect heights and the placement to give me the kind of glow that I wanted. And speaking of glow, we added more of these glowy light pillars that I've used before already. So, and after this, we were done. The glorious power core is finished. All hail the core.
The core is mother, the core is father.
Now here's a pretty involved detailing project that I'm sorry to say I don't have the footage for, but I made holo-computers. Of course, most of them just look like computers, but the screen in the middle is off, so you can see it's just glass with the text on it, so that shows that these are all holographic computers. Let me try to explain briefly how I built this. There are two main structures that make up the actual computer screen thing. On the very back, we have a set of sound barriers, so they are giving me the glass. A slightly curved glass that is most obvious in the third from the left, which is the one that says system ready. And then, to give more thicker sort of sides to these things, we have some sort of fence prop. I don't really remember what it was. I think it's a glass fence or something. Now, the glass sound barrier I mentioned is the only barrier I could find that decently supported text on it when you converted it to a procedural object. And that allowed me to write the system ready on there, which looks really great and clear at night. The one on the left isn't using the glass at all, and I'm actually using some sort of LCD screen, and I put text on that one. Finally, the most complex one by far is the second, where I actually put in a whole taskbar, icons, and windows on it. Now, when we zoom in, you can see it's not very cleanly done, but it's not like you're ever going to be this zoomed in when you're in the game anyway. Most of the icons and taskbar that we see there were built using the light pillars that I just used on the core because they're glowy, right? So they're perfect for looking like it is part of a screen or something, and you know, doesn't depend on ambient light or reflections or anything like that. So that was a lot of really precise and tedious work with procedural objects to shrink them into the right size I want them and overlaying these exactly how I needed it. And then to make the windows, that's a lot more simple. I'm just using ads or screens from things like ATMs to make the windows on the screen. Finally, at the bottom, we can see that we have something that might be kind of a keyboard and a touchpad kind of thing. Yes, it's a kind of sensor pad and key interface. I used the radiator prop for the keyboard and, of course, reshaped it to make it look the way I wanted it. And yet another light pillar for the sensor pad thing. And there you have it, a row of computers for when it's that perfect weather outdoors and it's just the perfect day to go outside and use a computer. Now, to finish looking at everything else I did in this area, first we have this garden that's right behind the computers. As you see, this took a little bit of work to get a pattern I wanted, but it's still not perfectly clean because it's very hard to drag tree assets around, because they kind of tend to move slightly in their place, and a lot of trees aren't perfectly symmetrical. So even though this garden was probably perfect where I built it, once I dragged it over here, it needed a lot of hand editing, and well, we got it pretty decent, I think. Next, the final view of the extra details we've added to the entrance, the actual entrance for vehicles. I think the oddest thing here is that yellow oval marker. That is a holographic zone marker. This is where we have some services underground, so we will be seeing vehicles dip underground and also come out from the ground. So that's the marker I devised to mark those kind of zones. Because the tunnel isn't rendered, I blocked it up with that door prop, and above that we have this black LCD screen, and when you convert it to procedural objects you can put text on it. So I spent a lot of time adding different text in English and Korean and Chinese, and trying to get it all lined up and in different colors to make it look like this progress report thing for the current residents, because remember that so far everyone else who lives in the city are the workers building the city. So it makes sense for us to have something like that so that we're all on the same page here. Now, I actually forgot to say that this is actually representing another key element of the world that my city is set in, and that is a multilingual culture, multilingual civilization. A lot of us in the language learning world really want people to understand that being a polyglot isn't really that big of a deal. A lot of people grow up that way. Language is just a very natural part of humanity, and we are very capable of learning many. It's really just about breaking out of all of this negativity out there that says that's an amazing thing, a super impressive thing that only few people can do. So this LCD screen represents that kind of world, my ideal world, where everyone is a polyglot. So it's very normal to have information in various languages, because you can pick the language that best suits the purpose. So for example, of all the languages I know, Chinese is the most compact horizontally, and because the characters are basically like symbols, they are perfect for things of the highest priority, emergencies, things like that. Korean is also fairly compact, so I would make that for things that are lesser priority. And then you could have other languages just for fun, that don't have to be important, but just even if it kind of goes into like quote-unquote stereotypes, like French would be the language of love, or maybe even German, Thai German with engineering, I don't know. So yeah, we'll continue seeing a variety of languages in this city. And now, it's time for a commercial area. And the reason that I even thought about building this right now is because of what you're seeing right here, which is that I wanted a dedicated road to the 5th level of the residential complex, because these are individual households. So we're starting a more luxurious kind of higher income level. So I thought about giving them their own entrance, which is why I built this road here. But once I did that, I thought about, this is another kind of little recess in the mountain, so let's make this a commercial area. Let's make it so that these people can more conveniently go shopping on their way away or to their house. So I very quickly settled on wanting to use this City Hall from the Toronto set, because you see it has this slope. It's the profile of it's kind of triangular. So I think it's perfect for the side of this road, and kind of again mimicking the slope that we have of this kind of small. It kind of, I was gonna say like an outcropping, but it's not. It's just the way this mountain kind of stretches out. Maybe a lot of mountains do this, right? It's kind of like they almost look like these roots of a tree. So like this whole mountain kind of has these roots that come out radially. Actually, I guess that is kind of a typical feature, but I don't know if it's normal to see it, like I said, radially out from the mountain. So whatever. Now I think it's pretty obvious that I just put a few commercial buildings as procedural objects so that I could kind of phase them into the mountainside, as I'm doing here as well. But I think it's important to know how I've done this when it comes to subscribing assets, so that people know to better manage their collections and their subscriptions in this game, because you can't be just adding everything that you like on the workshop. So here's what I do. I had decided I'm going to be working this commercial area, right? So I went to the workshop and I did my search of commercial buildings. I did some random searching, but I also went through my collection of future options. I have a collection of things that I like on the workshop, but I don't actually subscribe to them. So right now that I wanted something new, I went to that collection and looked through there. that's where most of these buildings came from. So I subscribed to those assets and then I placed it in here. Now, after this area is fairly done, so probably not at any point we're going to see in this video, but once that I felt that I was done putting the buildings that I wanted, I'm going to go back to my main collection of this city, and then I'm going to unsubscribe to any buildings I did not use. This, in my opinion, is the best way to handle how you subscribe and place assets, and it's also something that a lot of other people do. Have a plan or at least an idea on what you might be using on your next play session. Subscribe to those assets, and then once you're done, unsubscribe to what you didn't use. That way you keep your subscriptions to only the stuff that you're actually using, things that are actually in the city, so that you're not wasting, RAM and load times loading things that either you're not using or you're not even going to use in that play session. Now, as we continue to watch my modification of these buildings and placing them and coloring them and all that, I want to explain a little bit of what I was thinking as I did this. So, this is a futuristic city, right? So, we can see right here with the road, that road is going up the building about halfway, and I already placed, I think they're called instant commercial. It's a kind of a prop pack. So, we've already started one of the upper levels of this commercial area. Now, I didn't really have a plan.
You don't say.
No surprise there. I didn't have any plan on how many levels are going to be here. I'm just kind of going to wing it, of course, and just see what looks good, what felt right as we started building this up. But, of course, we need to start at not ground level. I'm just level 1. So here's something interesting, right? So in America, the ground floor is the first floor, right? I mean, sorry, it feels logical to us. The ground is a floor. There's a floor on the ground. We build the floor on it. Anyway, that doesn't mean that's historically the real answer. That's just my thinking. But anyway, here I'm not going to be doing that. I am going to use the ground and then first floor system, because notice here that we're building up the first floor of this commercial area. This is the quote-unquote ground level for all these buildings, this whole complex, but we're actually elevated. And it's not to say that we're going to have a basement under this, because it's not underground. It's just that we're elevated. Okay, now maybe the British people and other ones, they're telling me this is exactly why you called this is exactly why you called ground floor. I don't know. Anyway, so this is going to be a key thing, because part of the philosophy behind the creation of this city is that we're trying to avoid the ground, specifically trying to avoid the dirt, the grass, okay? I picked a rocky theme, and of course that was mostly just because I thought it looked cool, but it worked perfectly for what I want to do in this city, because we can build straight out of rock, okay? Rock is mostly non-living, not really a place we're going to be finding a lot of life. So we can build out of there, we can tunnel through rock, it's fine. But we don't really want to build on dirt and grass, because that's where we have life. That's where we're really damaging the environment. So what can you do? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to either cantilever off the rock, or we're simply going to be building off pillars, real pillars, or Langshaw's plasma pillar, which is basically like an energy hover pillar kind of thing. That's what we're going to be doing. Pillars or hovering platforms. That's how we're going to be building most of the city. When it comes to building out, because that's another thing, we're going to try to build vertically more than we do outward. Again, just trying to avoid that usage of land. Now, in the meantime, we've been watching me build up this first level, getting the platform done, and I was using this cobblestone network. I just want to make a quick comment that I did spend some time aligning them and making sure that the segments I used were the same length, because it is textured in a pattern. So you can't just randomly place these networks side by side and hope it looks good, right? So there's a specific brick pattern to them, so that's why I made sure that because I needed them to cover a wide area, I had to put the networks side by side. So I also need to make sure that the lengths were equal, or at least in some way worked out so that the texture would tile properly. Now, what's going on here is that we're building around the road, right? The ramp that goes up to the 5th level of the residential complex, and we're gonna build this up as a kind of a... I wasn't sure if it could really be a highlight of the area, but at least a small feature for this first level. And what we're gonna have is, I think I already have a cut in there. Yeah, there's a cut on the ground right under the lowest parts of that road. And that's an area that I want us to be able to look through and see the tram station that I'm putting in right now. Now, there's already a station out there that has kind of a glass grid-like covering over it, and I thought that could work here, but it turns out that, you know, it is a complete station, and what I really needed is just the top part. So that thing's not going to work because there's obviously a bottom to it where the tracks are. So I will end up having to make that myself. But first I need to get the actual station in, and I was having a big issue, which you can see here is that the tracks kept sinking down to a really low level. It seems that the track is following the terrain, I guess. And so I'm not really sure what setting the asset creator messed up here. Now, at the time I was building this, I hadn't really started messing around with assets in the asset editor or anything, so I didn't really think about trying to fix this myself. So I just spent a lot of time trying to level the terrain and just move things and I don't know, just mess around until I finally got it to work. Like I don't have a clear solution. I just realized that for the location that I was trying to put the station in, messing with the height of the terrain seemed to help. So I simply leveled the terrain at slightly different heights until I finally found one that worked. Now, the thing I'm adding on here in the tracks is a foundation network. And that's because I don't want the tracks to look all vanilla-like all the time. So at least for the station area, I wanted something to look a little nicer. Now you can see that this station has this big blue tram sign in front, and it's not really supported by anything because it's meant to be a holographic sign. So we don't really have a good way to make it look holographic though. It's not self-illuminated or anything. So that's why I'm putting these I'm not sure what kind of lights they are, maybe floodlights or something. They have a pretty strong bloom to them, which I really like, and I think they really help give that impression that something is being projected. So I use that a lot actually for any time that I want to have something that looks holographic. Now, up in front here, oh, that's another big problem. That's another asset, a sunken parking asset that also has an issue with the terrain. So, that was a real big annoyance. And again, just like this tram station, I had to place it a million times, mess with the terrain so many times until I finally got it to work. You wouldn't know from my footage because I totally skipped all that. There's no reason to look at it. The only thing is that there was some clipping here, and there's no way I was going to touch that parking thing again. So I didn't even want to move it a little bit because it could reset the roads. So I just covered up the glitches, added these decals. Well, that's more for styling, of course. Decals are just for styling. But yeah, just added these walls and stupid simple things, blah, blah, blah. Now, considering what I said earlier about the design philosophy of this city, you might be wondering, wait, why do I have a sunken parking lot here? That's obviously on the ground, on dirt, on soil. And I have to say, yes, you're right. I made a mistake. Actually, I hadn't fully formulated that philosophy at this point. So I simply wanted something sunken. It's actually, this is a parking asset that I've been wanting to use for a long time. And I think even later, or if I did have an idea of my design philosophy at this point, I just said to myself that this is the very beginning. We can make a few sacrifices at the very beginning, but this is going to be the one exception to the rule. So we're going to allow those kind of exceptions where the city started being built from. Okay, so I was wrong. Here's the part where I actually noticed the issue with the parking lots, and I started, like I said, going crazy trying to figure it out. So I'm showing a little bit of the process here, but trust me, this was a very long time. This has not only sped up a crazy amount, but I've also cut out off footage. So I think in total, just getting the tram station and these parking lots in here, it took me like 2 hours. Seriously. It was that bad. I don't really need to talk about what we're seeing for a couple minutes, so let me speak about a little bit of where this is all leading to. So that parking area is a random, fairly flat area, right? Especially if it's sunken. Compared to the commercial area, which we can already see is slowly being built up. Well, it already is pretty high. It's almost, it's already almost to the top of the mountain. So we've got the height of the city there, some of the big futuristic height that I really want to have. But then that parking area is just so short. Well, no, there's definitely going to be stuff built over that or on top of it. Now, the way that we have this tram station just under the first level of the commercial complex, and the fact that it's at the edge of that commercial complex, made me feel that this is a perfect place for kind of a transport hub. We already have the vehicle parking, and we have this tram station, so I was gonna find ways to add bus, maybe, okay, not train, because that's got the top of the mountain, but just other transport options like that, and just have it all here, right? Because we have, it's a perfect place. We have parking. I mean, that's just the best reason right there. If you are using your own private vehicles, then they're gonna be left right here, and then you move to public transport, whether you are traveling within the city or you're coming or going between this city and the neighboring city. Now, I've already uploaded a video that will show you this, so you can go check it out. I believe it's called A Vision of the Future, because it really is a vision of the future of the city. And you can see there that we've already built up a bus line. Yes, a bus line that goes straight from here all the way to the border connection, but also a loop for both. No, yeah, for buses. I was gonna say trams, but it's just that they look like trams. But it's for, there's also a loop there for the buses that run within our city, which I actually think is the real source of the idea of making a transport hub. Because right now our buses turn around within the apartment complex. They even go all the way inside and, you know, take that tunnel. But now that we've sort of expanded the map and we've made this commercial area, the only thing the buses can do is go all the way down to the highway and then do who knows what. So we needed to give them another loop. And that's where the idea came up, where like, okay, well, I've already made this sort of extension above the tram station where the buses have to turn around. Why not build something more out of this, and maybe even above it? Alright, I finished that point right on time, because here we are back on this little hole thing that I said was going to be a way to peek down into the station. Although I have to say, it's not going to be a very clear look into the station, because that station does have a roof. So it's not going to be much, but oh well. Just try to have something a little fancy at this level. I offset, so this panel right here, the grid one, okay, yeah, we can see that on the left side I left it open and I'm putting this glass piece. On the other side, I'm doing it the opposite. I'm putting the square one on our left and then the glass on the right. So they're offset and just make it look a little fancier, right? And then I needed, however, to make this invisible, make the road invisible, and already know what it's going to look like, so I can know exactly where I'm going to be putting, like how high this is going to go, basically, how high these glass pieces are going to be going. Here I am again, adding our little transition piece that we've been using around the city a couple times already. As always, marking the end of a physical road to transition to the air road. And then after that, just a minor detailing, really. Just putting a few ads here, something interesting, some signs, and then I think I put a lamppost. And that was it, really. Looks pretty simple, but it actually took a long time because those square glass grid things, I don't know if it's really their problem or if it's something about how procedural objects works, but when I was trying to get them lined up on their edges, they were not being rendered properly. So it would look like the models were going through each other when they hadn't made contact yet, or like it wasn't rendering properly what was behind what. So I had to rotate the camera a ton of times and look at it from all sorts of directions so I could actually know if I was making my proper cube or not. It was very strange, and I did run into that problem a few times later, but it's something to watch out for. Something to watch out for. Like, don't trust a single perspective. Speaking of annoyances, but something that must be done if you want things functional, it was time to start setting down some paths. Now this part was pretty cool though, because I could add this sidewalk toward the... Toward? Toward what? Well, I guess there is a toward, but that's not the word I wanted. I was trying to say around this parking lot road. And okay, it is headed toward this elevator that we're putting right here. Now what we're doing in this area is two things. One is making the visible paths just continuing to design this area. Nothing special there and pretty obvious. But the other thing that we'll be working on is making the invisible functional paths in the places where we don't actually have path assets, like, you know, the first floor that we had been building up earlier. So I'm bringing down this path right now to eventually connect to the paths down here, which I guess is what I'm doing right now. However, I want to say that I don't know necessarily this is the best thing to do, particularly because I can't even be sure that these are going to be used. You know, for paths to be used, you need to have a reason for the people to walk there, and just putting all these paths around, yeah, it makes them capable of holding pedestrians, but it doesn't mean that they're actually going to take that path if there's no reason to go that way. This is something that I will try to quote-unquote study and see if I can learn how to manage better, because luckily I just found a YouTube video of someone who claims they do plan these in ways that help promote the movement of pedestrians. It was CityWokCityWall. He's just starting a Mars series, which is kind of funny. I'm like, oh, we have a competitor here now. Not just because of the futuristic kind of stuff, but because what he showed in his first episode really looks like a lot of what I'm doing, trying to get some multi-level stuff and trying to be really creative with how a lot of the transport options and a lot of things work. Of course, he has a completely different approach. Looks like he is going to go with that kind of dystopian... actually, yeah, the story is very dystopian. That would be cool to follow. But anyway, he said that in his Kobayashi Island series, he did devise ways to make pedestrians take certain paths. Now, in general, I can definitely imagine how that can be done, but I'm just really curious about checking that out to see exactly how he was doing it, because yeah, instead of me figuring it out, you know, it'd be better if I can learn from a master. So I definitely do end up not trying to worry too much about making the paths functional as I build these things. I mean, the real aim here is to make things as I want them to look, right? Not worry too much about how functional it will be. Anyway, that's all I have to say as we finish watching me complete this path here and getting the basic look of this commercial area. A lot of it gets done here, so we have a very clear image of what this will look like, and really all the stuff that comes after is more like detailing. Like, we're not going to add any more buildings. Overall, it's really going to be adding more paths, adding little greenery, trees, benches, ads, things like that, signs, you know, whatever. So, thank you everybody for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're excited as I am for how this city is going to be built up from here on out. It's really starting to take some shape. It's starting to look really cool. So please hit the like button, hit subscribe if you want to see more, come by the stream if you want to see this live and talk to me, ask questions, whatever you want to do. Follow me on Twitter or even Reddit if you like. I'm also starting to release some assets, some simple network assets, but they're going to be particularly useful for detailers, and they're definitely things that I will be using in my city later on. But first, wherever you may be, good morning, good afternoon, and good